Ladies and gentlemen, there are forces in this world not easily measured. We speak of strength, but too often we define it by external displays. Power, noise, dominance. Yet, there exists another kind of strength, deep, quiet, and transformative. It moves beneath the surface, guiding the soul rather than the sword. Among us walk women whose spiritual power is neither proclaimed nor paraded. It is invisible to the untrained eye, yet undeniable to the soul that has learned to see. Their power is not the kind that conquers but the kind that awakens. Today we speak not of ordinary traits, but of 6 unseen marks that dwell in women of high spiritual power, signs as ancient as the earth, and as vital as breath. She does not speak to be heard, she speaks because truth moves her, and often she does not speak at all. Her silence is not absence but presence. It is the field where deeper communication occurs, the kind that transcends sound and enters the realm of soul. In her silence, one does not sense emptiness but a profound fullness, as if every unspoken word she carries has a life of its own, ripening slowly in the quiet soil of her being. When she is silent, the air shifts, time slows, and those near her find themselves listening, not to her, but to something inside themselves that has long waited to be heard. This is not a silence born from suppression or fear. It is not the silence of those who feel unseen or unheard by the world. It is not a silencing, but a chosen retreat into the depth where real power gathers. Not power over others but power within the self. There is a sacred dignity in her restraint. She knows that not every emotion demands expression, not every insight demands explanation, not every truth requires argument. She understands that silence can speak louder than declarations, that to remain still in the face of chaos is to command more than noise ever could. She walks into a room and doesn't need to announce herself. People feel her. They feel the stability, the inner rootedness that she carries, a groundedness that is immune to the surface-level performances of the world. Her silence is not cold, it is warm with the hum of ancient wisdom. She is listening, not just to words but to energies, to spaces between sentences, to the subtle dissonance in a person's eyes when their mouth says they are fine. She hears not only what is said, but what is avoided, omitted, denied. Her listening creates a mirror in which others glimpse parts of themselves they didn't know were visible. In silence she communicates with realms most have forgotten. She hears the rustle of intuition before it takes shape, the soft tap of insight before it enters consciousness. Her silence makes her a vessel. A container that holds space for the unspoken, the not yet formed, the mysterious. And because she is not in a hurry to fill silence with sound, others find themselves lowering their guard, speaking more honestly, or choosing stillness alongside her. In this way, her silence becomes healing. It is not passive, it is deeply active in its receptivity. It receives not only information but spirit, emotion and energy. There is discipline in her silence, a refusal to be pulled into the noise of the world's demands, a resistance to the ego's need to constantly prove, react, or defend. She is not in the business of proving herself. She does not use words to perform intellect or justify her existence. She knows that truth, when real, does not require persuasion. Her relationship with words is sacred, not transactional. When she does speak, it feels like a bell rung in a temple, measured, intentional, and echoing long after the sound itself fades. The world often mistakes loudness for leadership, constant output for productivity, and extroversion for strength. But she challenges these illusions. Her silence reveals an entirely different paradigm of power, one that is inwardly sourced and self-sustaining. It is a power that grows in the dark, like roots, and then supports the visible structure without seeking recognition. She moves through life quietly, not because she lacks passion or conviction, but because she has learned the value of preserving energy for when it truly matters. In a world obsessed with saying more, she has learned to speak less so that when she does speak, her words arrive not as information but as transformation. Not as noise but as an opening into something more than speech alone can ever capture. The spiritually powerful woman is intimately acquainted with the inner terrain of her own psyche. A terrain that many avoid because it is dark, uncertain, and full of shadows. She does not flee from this inner landscape but walks deliberately into it, like a diver sinking into deep waters, trusting the descent even when she cannot yet see what lies at the bottom. She knows that to truly grow, one must confront the underworld within, the neglected emotions, the unhealed wounds, the unlived lives, and the archetypes that operate in the background of consciousness like silent gods demanding acknowledgement. She knows that real power is not found in what is displayed, but in what is integrated. Her strength comes from having met herself fully, in her beauty and in her ruin, in her light and in her shadow. Without turning away, this inner confrontation is not a single moment but a continual act of courage. Again and again, she returns to the places in herself that hurt or confuse, places that evoke shame, sorrow, rage or longing. She does not rationalize them away or bury them beneath affirmations and spiritual platitudes. She sits with them, listens to them, and allows them to speak, not to dominate but to be understood. She knows that what we resist within ourselves is the lens through which we distort the world, while what we accept becomes the soil in which wisdom takes root. This is not a comfortable path, but it is a liberating one. It is the journey of descending not to escape life, but to retrieve essential from the depths of one's being. She has cried with the younger version of herself that was abandoned, laughed with the wildness she once suppressed to appear acceptable, embraced the jealous, fearful, angry selves that others told her to reject. And in doing so, she has reclaimed pieces of her own soul. This reclamation gives her a magnetic gravity. People feel safer around her, not because she is perfect, but because she has allowed herself to be human. She does not carry judgment in her presence, only understanding. Her power is the power of presence, the kind that does not flinch when someone else reveals their pain. Because she has sat with her own in this deep relationship with the inner world, she becomes her own oracle. She consults not just with logic or external authority, but with the symbolic language of dreams, synchronicities, body sensations, and emotional currents. She reads her inner world like a mythic map, where everything, emotion, every pattern, every inner figure, has a message, a purpose, a key to greater wholeness. She does not separate spirituality from psychology, but moves within both realms as if they are one, because for her they are. Her spiritual power is not the result of escape from pain but of entering it consciously and returning with something meaningful. Her self-awareness is not rigid but fluid. She understands that who she is continues to evolve, and she holds space for contradiction within herself. She can be fierce and gentle, grieving and joyful, solitary and connected, without collapsing into confusion or needing to define herself too narrowly. This flexibility of identity is a result of inner integration, not fragmentation. She no longer fears being misunderstood by others because she no longer misunderstands herself. And in that space of inner clarity, she allows others to be complex too. She invites authenticity simply by being authentic, by not pretending to be at peace when she is not, by not hiding her inner processes, and by embodying the sacredness of being fully alive, fully aware, and fully human without apology. Others often find themselves disarmed in her presence. Not because she tries to fix them or advise them, but because she listens in a way that mirrors back their own truths. She does not speak over someone's experience but honors it, having learned to honor her own. In a culture that values external validation and superficial harmony, she offers a different model, one where spiritual power comes from radical self-honesty. From meeting oneself in the silence and staying long enough to hear what the soul has been trying to say all along without needing it to be neat, or pretty or resolved. There is a kind of knowing that defies the structure of reason, that arrives not in the form of thought but as sensation, image, whisper, or presence. The spiritually powerful woman moves through the world with this knowing alive inside her. Not because she sought it but because she never abandoned it. It is a wisdom not taught in schools or earned through achievement but remembered, as though it were etched into her very bones long before language ever touched her tongue. When she enters a room, she perceives more than what is visible. She senses emotional undercurrents, unspoken truths, and the subtle geometry of human interaction. Her eyes seem to see beyond the physical, her attention landing not only on what is said but why it is done, not only on what is said but what is being avoided. This knowing lives in her body, in her gut, in her skin, in the part that listens not to noise but to essence. She cannot always explain how she knows what she knows, and she has long since stopped trying to justify it. Early in life she may have been told she was too sensitive, too intuitive, too emotional, too much. But over time, she realized that what others called too much was in fact her gift, the very channel through which truth comes, often quietly, often in symbols. She dreams vividly, not just in sleep but in waking life. Symbols speak to her, sometimes through nature, sometimes through music, sometimes through the spontaneous imagery that arises from within when she is still. A crow landing near her window may not be just a bird but a message. A strange coincidence may not be random but an alignment. She understands that life speaks in metaphor, that the language of the soul is not always direct, and that her task is not to decode with logic but to feel with presence. This kind of knowing often sets her apart, not in a way that isolates, but in a way that makes her difficult to categorize. She may not adhere to dogma or fixed belief systems, because her connection to the divine does not need a name or structure to be real. She can find divinity in the space between moments, in the silence of dusk, in the way a child looks up without fear, in the broken things, the forgotten places, the contradictions that most people rush to resolve. Her knowing is not interested in correctness but in resonance. If it vibrates truth through her body, she listens. If it feels hollow, no matter how convincing the source, she lets it pass through without attachment. She walks a path guided by this mysterious compass, often making choices that others don't understand. Not because she seeks rebellion but because she honors alignment. She knows when something is right for her without needing evidence. She knows when to leave, when to stay, when to speak, when to remain still, not because someone else told her, but because the deeper rhythm within her shifts. People often ask how she knows, and she cannot answer in a way that satisfies the intellect because this knowing does not arise from intellect. It arises from communion. She is in constant conversation with something larger than herself, and this conversation does not require words. She sees patterns. Emotional, ancestral, collective, moving through people, through families, through cultures, and she senses how they repeat until they are witnessed. She may say something that feels impossibly accurate to someone she has just met. Not out of cleverness but because she is tuned to the field where all things connect. Her intuition is not a trick or an accident, it is an ancient form of intelligence, refined by her willingness to listen beyond what is comfortable, to trust what cannot be proven, to surrender to a deeper stream of truth even when it leads her into the unknown. And because she lives this way, others find themselves opening to the possibility that they too have access to this kind of knowing, not by learning more but by remembering what they have always known beneath the noise. Beneath the fear. Beneath the conditioning that told them to stop listening to the quiet voice that speaks without sound. The spiritually powerful woman cannot be owned by titles, praise, or recognition because her identity does not depend on them. She walks through the world with an inner compass so finely attuned to soul that no amount of external validation can pull her off course. While others chase approval, position, or prestige, she moves according to a deeper rhythm, one that is often invisible to the outside world but undeniably strong within her. She is not immune to the temptations of status or the comfort of praise, but she does not rely on them to feel worthy. She has already claimed her worth in a place that no title can touch, no spotlight can illuminate, and no applause can reach. This detachment is not born of arrogance but of liberation. The kind that comes only from having untangled herself from the illusion that who she is must be proven by what she achieves. She may occupy roles of leadership or influence, but she wears those roles lightly, never mistaking them for her essence. She knows that true power is not given by institutions or followers or social standing. It is cultivated in solitude, tested in silence, and made whole in the absence of anyone watching. Because of this, she does not perform her spirituality to gain approval. She does not post her practices for validation or shape her message to be palatable. Her life is her message, and her truth does not require marketing. She can walk away from the stage just as easily as she can step onto it, not because she is indifferent, but because she understands that ego feeds on applause. While soul grows in the quiet, others may not understand how someone so capable, so gifted, so radiant could be so unattached to recognition. They may try to define her by her career, her relationships, her achievements, but she refuses to be captured in such narrow frames. She is not what she does. She is not how others see her. She is not the projections placed upon her. She is the one who watches all of that and stays centered in something older than identity. Something truer than image. There is a freedom in her presence, a kind of inner sovereignty that makes it clear she does not belong to any system, any trend, any need to be liked. This is not to say she does not care, but that she cares more about alignment than applause. More about integrity than visibility. She has learned that the pursuit of status often leads people further from themselves. She has seen what happens when people lose their souls in exchange for success, when they silence their truth to maintain a brand, when they become trapped in the very image they once thought would liberate them. She refuses that path, not because she is above it, but because she has already walked its edges and found it hollow. Her value system is shaped not by hierarchy but by energy, what feels true, what feels alive, what deepens connection to spirit, and because of this, she may often go unnoticed in the conventional sense, her work unseen by many, her wisdom unrecognized by the mainstream. But she is never invisible to those who can truly see. Her detachment from praise allows her to speak uncomfortable truths, to stand alone when needed, to follow intuition even when it contradicts popular opinion. She does not flatter for favor or soften her voice to be more acceptable. She speaks with clarity because she has nothing to lose by being real. Her power lies in the fact that she is not seduced by the game. She knows the cost of performing a self that isn't true, and she will not pay that price. And in this refusal she becomes a mirror for others. A reminder that they too can live without asking for permission, that they can find a way to be whole without becoming hollow. That they can release the exhausting chase for validation, and return instead to the sacred simplicity of being rooted in who they already are, beneath the striving, beneath the proving, beneath the endless need to be seen by others when they have not yet seen themselves. Pain does not weaken her. It transforms her. The spiritually powerful woman has walked through fire, not once but many times, not to emerge unscathed but to emerge true. She carries her scars not as shameful reminders of what she endured, but as sacred marks of what she survived and transmuted. Her wounds are not open, they are integrated. Her story is not a cry for sympathy but a testament to the alchemy of the soul. She knows that pain is not the enemy, that suffering is not punishment, that grief is not a flaw in the system but part of the sacred unfolding. She does not romanticize pain, but neither does she reject it. She enters it willingly when it comes, knowing that to resist it is to be ruled by it, and to fist it is to reclaim her power from it. Her relationship with pain is not built on avoidance but on reverence. She does not escape into distractions, deny what hurts, or numb herself with the world's offerings of temporary relief. She allows pain to teach her, to strip away illusion, to purify her vision, to humble her ego. In her pain she listens more deeply, in her sorrow she finds a doorway into compassion. In her rage she uncovers a reservoir of truth. She knows that every emotional experience is an invitation, and that beneath the suffering lies something more essential. A wisdom that can only be accessed through full presence. She does not rush her healing or force resolution. She honors timing cycles, and the nonlinear nature of transformation. Her strength is not in how quickly she recovers, but in how fully she allows herself to be broken open and changed by the experience without becoming bitter or closed. This ability to transmute pain is not mystical in the way most people imagine. It is grounded, raw, and often invisible. It happens in quiet moments, in solitude, in silence. It happens when she chooses to breathe through the achy instead of shutting it down. It happens when she holds space for her own tears, when she whispers to her fear that it is welcome here, when she wraps her arms around grief and lets it stay for as long as it needs. She does not seek to fix her pain, she seeks to understand it. She does not turn away from the parts of her story that hurt. She brings them to the altar, not to be erased but to be sanctified. Others often wonder how she became so calm, so wise, so grounded. They see the grace she carries but not the path she walked to carry it. They feel comfort in her presence, not realizing that she had to learn to comfort herself when no one else could. Her empathy is not learned in books. It is earned in the fire. She can hold space for others because she has sat in the darkest spaces of her own soul. She can witness someone else's breakdown without judgment, because she has had to rebuild herself from the ruins of her own undoing. Her peace is not performative. It is the residue of having made peace with her own pain. She is not afraid of emotional intensity because she no longer fears her own depths. She does not pathologize feeling. She understands that feeling is how the soul communicates. She has stopped asking what is wrong with her when she feels too much, and has started asking what truth her feelings are trying to show her. Her resilience is not about suppressing emotion but about honoring it so deeply that it can move through her, teach her, change her, and ultimately release her. And in doing this, she becomes a vessel of transmutation, capable of holding pain without drowning in it, capable of being with suffering without becoming consumed by it, capable of walking through grief and still seeing beauty, still choosing love, still offering presence to a world that does not always know how to be present with itself. She moves through the world with a quiet certainty that she is never alone. Even in solitude, even in silence, even in the moments when everything around her seems to be falling apart. Her life is not built on the shaky foundation of idle control, or predictable outcomes, but on a deep and unshakable connection to something greater, something ancient. Something that speaks not in words but in presence. This connection is not something she lives as, it's something she lives. It is woven into the way she breathes, the way she listens, the way she sits with the unknown without needing to define it. She does not worship from a distance but walks hand in hand with the sacred, not as a separate force outside of her but as an ever-present current moving through her. This connection does not require a temple, a ritual, or a set of beliefs. It lives in her like a heartbeat, consistent and alive, whether she is in a forest or in a crowded city, whether she is in joy or in despair. She knows that divinity does not require her to be good or pure or certain. It only requires her to be present, to be real, to be willing to listen beyond her own ego. She does not claim to understand the mystery but she honors it. She does not try to control life through spiritual practice. She lets life shape her, trusting that what comes is not always what is wanted but always what is needed for her evolution. Her prayers are not always spoken. Sometimes they are just the act of noticing, of pausing, of saying yes to what is. She does not need to be seen as spiritual to be connected to spirit. Her spirituality is not a costume or a brand. It is the quiet knowing that everything is connected, that everything matters, that the sacred is not separate from the ordinary but hidden within it. She finds God in the small things, in the rhythm of her own breath, in the quiet moments between tasks, in the way the light moves across the floor at sunrise, in the tears she lets fall without resistance. She does not need signs to trust, though they often appear. She does not ask for proof to believe, though confirmation finds her. She does learn to recognize the voice of the divine not by volume but by resonance, the deep feeling in her body that says yes, this is true, this is real. Even if it cannot be explained, her connection to something greater gives her strength. Not because it protects her from pain, but because it holds her through it. She does not bypass suffering with spiritual language. She walks through it holding the hand of the mystery. She does not expect life to be easy, fair, or always kind. But she trusts that there is intelligence beneath the chaos, a deeper order inside the disorder. And this trust is what allows her to surrender when surrender is the only path. She knows that letting go is not weakness but wisdom, that control is often a mask for fear. And that faith is not about certainty but about intimacy with the unknown. She lives her life as a quiet offering. Not because she seeks reward but because something inside her insists on devotion. Her choices are not always logical but they are aligned. She may walk away from things that appear perfect because her soul says no. She may say yes to things that terrify her because something greater says this is the way. She does not follow maps made by others. She listens to the compass of the sacred within her, the one that speaks in dreams, in nature, in silence, in the space where thinking stops and knowing begins. Others may look at her and wonder how she remains so calm when things fall apart, how she continues to love in a world so fractured, how she keeps returning to presence even when it hurts. But they do not see the roots beneath her feet, the source she draws from, the well that never runs dry, the ancient knowing that she is held, that she is guided, that she is a part of something that cannot be broken even when everything else is. So what then marks a woman of high spiritual power? Not her voice but her silence. Not her dominance but her depth. Not her knowing, not her image but her essence. Not her perfection but her wholeness. Not her escape from the world, but her rootedness in both heaven and earth. These women do not seek to lead, they simply become impossible not to follow. And in a world starved of authenticity, their very being is an act of revolution. Let us not only admire them, but strive to become them. Thank you.